Tonight on Introt, Eva Peron, who in her time was called the most powerful woman in the world. Born on the wrong side of the tracks, she grew up yearning for fame as an actress, but played a real-life role that went way beyond anyone's imagination. Eva Peron would rise from the slums of Argentina to become its first lady, a potent mixture of youth, beauty, and ambition that aroused fierce passions throughout the nation. To her admirers, she was a saint who gave her life to help the poor. To her enemies, she was nothing but a common whore, grasping for the power and luxury to which she had no right. How did this slender young woman rise so far in a society dominated by men? How was she able to fascinate an entire nation and change it forever? She would die tragically young before she could have children. But she considered all of Argentina to be her family. She left behind a heartbroken country, but the power of her legend would extend beyond the grave, continuing to shape Argentina and inspiring one of the best-known musicals of all time, and a film starring Madonna. Eva Peron, the woman who called herself Evita.
But who is this Santa Eva is howling hysterical sorrow? What kind of goddess by without her? Style, the best show in town.
Eva Peron was running the country down there. It was really fascinating.
James O. Howard was born September 10th, 1926 in Donora, Pennsylvania. He graduated from high school there and went to the Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point. There he graduated and went on to serve in the U.S. Merchant Marines, having left the Merchant Marines in 1948.
This happens to be a model of a ship that was with American Export Lines. And this same style of ship was called a C2 cargo ship. And the very first ship I ever went to sea on was this caliber of ship. But its name was the Lightning, MV Lightning, meaning motor vessel Lightning. And MV motor vessel meant it had big diesel engines in it. Lots of ships had steam engines, and if they had steam engines, they were called SS, or steamship. And if they were Navy ships, they were USN ships, U.S. Navy ships. Okay, now, also see this picture over here?
Yeah.
Okay, I used to sail after the war was over, World War II. I used to sail on this one, which was called the Brazil. And I was engineering officer on that Brazil. And this used to make 42-day trips from New York to Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina. There were 3 sister ships of it, the Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina. And this one, can't think of the other one at the moment, but you know, they were great ships. I enjoyed my time at sea with them. So that's all I know about ships for today.
After the war was over, and after the education at Kings Point was over, well, of course, I was a licensed engineering officer, and came out in December of '48, was my graduation. And at that time, while the military certainly didn't want anybody, they were trying to dump people out, so you had to go and get a job, and my only training was this maritime engineering. So I looked around for a job, and I went with Moore McCormick Steamship Line, became a reasonably proficient engineer in their minds, having been on turbines and diesels and everything else. they had the luxury liners, more McCormick did, and the three luxury liners that they had were the Brazil, the Uruguay, and the Argentina. And I was assigned then to go on the Brazil. And the Brazil made 42-day round trips from New York to Trinidad was the stop. And in Trinidad, you would always, if you were southbound, you would always meet them northbound of those three ships, was the way the schedules worked out. And the northbound ship always had a party on board it for the passengers. It was a big time party time. But in any event, the 42-day trips consisted of New York, Trinidad, then frequently we would stop at Belém, which is the mouth of the Amazon River, then on down to Rio de Janeiro and Santos, Brazil, and then Montevideo, and Buenos Aires.
I wanna see me up with your heat, with your noise, with your dirt over to me where I'm staying. Every breath in my body.
The Argentinians simply did not like the Americans for any number of reasons. And Argentina also housed a lot of the German officers, the German military went down there after the war. But in any event, Evita was the big thing there.
There again, you outshine the enemy. I
Used to do was to call these big meetings in up at the palace, and she would stand on top. She would stand on top of the palace balcony up there, and she would come out and speak to the people, and she would always end up by somewhat telling them that she had been a poor girl and she'd done very well, and she and her husband were going to do right by them. And she was always very benevolent in that, you see, I have this beautiful flowered dress on, or evening gown type of thing, and she would show them from this balcony. And then these trucks would pull in the periphery of these crowds, and then they would open the doors to the trailer trucks, and they would start tossing out all these dresses, which were very similar to her dress, and that was her gift to the people. But
Eva Peron Foundation built thousands of schools and hospitals, often stocking them with the most expensive equipment, to show that the poor deserved the same as the rich. Eva herself would visit the projects at night to make sure they were running properly.
She remembered, you know, what people needed. She remembered that people were playing football, but they didn't have shoes. Or she remembered that people couldn't get to doctors. And she never seemed to have gotten sufficiently distant from that to forget.
France's Le Monde newspaper called Evita the Madonna of the Argentine poor. And the poor themselves often used the word saint.
They were so surprised that they would say, I have found my fairy godmother, my angel. They were not used to being received with this kind of generosity, so vital, so full of emotion.
The Eva Peron Foundation became a huge business with $200 million in assets and 14,000 workers. Much of the money came from unions and private industry, with Evita's prodding.
She would tell the businessmen and the cabinet ministers in her husband's government what she needed. She didn't ask for favors.
No andaba con, no pedía favores.
Evita's opponents claim she siphoned off much of the money for herself. One report claiming she had $700 million in a Swiss bank account.
The matter is that she and her husband really ran, you might say drug market, but I don't mean marijuana or opium or anything like that, although it might have been at all. They ran the legitimate aspirin, pills, so-called sulfa drugs. They controlled all the medicinal drugs for the country. As a result, they had pretty tight control over things, and they marked up through their distribution system. That's how they made a lot of their money, by controlling the medicinal drugs. I'm not.
But fine as the
Yeah, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I got into real trouble unknowingly. The women's clubs in Argentina, some of them were very violently against Evita. I say violently, I don't mean that. They were very much opposed in writing. And I remember going, when I was in Buenos Aires, to a department store. And when I went into the department store, what I was doing was going looking for souvenirs for my mom and dad. And as a matter of fact, I got them little teaspoons type of things. But anyhow, to do that, I had to go up 3 or 4 flights in the department store. And when I went into the store, though, at the entranceway, there was this whole gang of ladies which were passing out pamphlets. And of course it was in Spanish, and I didn't speak Spanish. I took it, had a picture of Evita on it, and the Spanish words. Put it in my pocket. I went on up to the 3rd floor, and when I came back down, the store, which had been, it was like Kaufman's or Gimbel's, the equivalent of Buenos Aires. When I came down, there was nobody there hardly in the downstairs levels. So I proceeded to start out the door. First thing I know, the police were there, and they searched you down, and I had this pamphlet on me. And apparently the pamphlet was all about Evita and the wrong things that she was doing, and her trying to present it in a different kind of light. So they were somewhat objecting to it. But anyhow, everybody who was there who had the pamphlet all had to go off to the police station. And of course, I had my passport with me. It was a Siemens, my passport. And I was then able, the worst thing in the world you could have happen to you is be turned over or asked for. They always told us that on the ship. If anything ever happens, don't ask for the U.S. Embassy. Always ask for the British Embassy. So I asked for the British Embassy. They then were able to do whatever they did in their magical ways. That myself and there was another young engineer that had also had the same experience. They got us both out, and we went back to the ship.
Since Evita's death, but the story of an illegitimate slum girl who rose to captivate a colonel and then a nation still fascinates the public imagination. Evita's life was brief, but it had all the ingredients of great myth. An astonishing rise to the top, a magnetic appeal that enthralled a nation, and a tragic finale just as her star shone at its brightest.
To our favorite merchant marine. Thanks for all the memories, Dad. You're really special.